Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we taste the makers. No, we talk about the world of TV and film, and we tell you what's good, what's bad, and what's going on in this world. And with me, as always, is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. I'm a little sick. You might be able to hear it in my voice, but that didn't stop me from. I was actually was more reason to be able to watch as much TV as I did this weekend. So yeah, and I managed to get to the movies before I realized I was sick. So good timing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before you realized you were sick is an interesting way of phrasing that.
Well, I've assumed I was sick at some point, even when I went to the movie, or I caught it at the movies. Although I have to say there were not that many people in the movie theaters that I went to go see. So who knows? And then I stayed home all weekend and watched TV. So yeah.
Who knows indeed. All right. Well, we have some news stories to talk about. A big one that happened right after we recorded last week. Plenty of new shows and movies this week, and some upcoming shows and movies as well. The big piece of news, the big thing that dropped, of course, I feel like it was the day of or day after we recorded, and I was like, this is so ridiculous. Denis Villeneuve has been attached. He is going to be directing the next James Bond movie. I heard this and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, feels huge. There were some names thrown around. I think Alfonso Cuarón was one that had been sort of rumored for a bit. I believe that was sort of, if not started by Matt Bellany from The Town, sort of was hinting that might be a possibility. But I'm very excited. I know some people are feeling like, Denis had this stretch of movies that are all these like original movies between like Cesario and Arrival, and he just has this really interesting stretch. Even Incendies before that's like sort of a smaller Canadian film, and he's moved into franchise IP. He did Blade Runner, and obviously he's done Dune, and so I know that there are some people who feel like they kind of want the old Denis of like, give me some original stuff. I don't know. I'm pretty excited about this. If you read anything, I've watched any of the interviews. Denis, for a long time going back, has said he would love to do a James Bond film. He grew up on James Bond films, really loves them. I think this is an interesting pivot because it's not like, I feel like he's done all this like sci-fi stuff, and this is, I feel like, at least a different, kind of more maybe Cesario than any. Like, I feel like, and obviously I don't think will be as dark as that, but it can sort of do the action of that. And so Denis is probably my favorite director right now. I think like at least top 3, if not my favorite. So I'm excited for this. My only worry, Taran, is like, who's going to play James Bond? That's my only worry. I feel like the names that are being thrown out, I'm a little like, I don't know about that James Bond.
That is what's being like spread around. It's like now who's going to be cast. But yeah, I mean, this was shocking to me at first. And then I did, like, after thinking about it, I was like, oh, you know what? He is kind of, he does a lot of adaptations and like franchise stuff. Like, he started with Incendies and Prisoners and Enemy and Sicario.
Arrival is kind of the last one. I feel like once and that's just it. He just gets to Blade Runner and Dune. Like, it's not like he's like,
but like Arrival was an adaptation of a short story, and then Blade Runner, and now Dune. Like, half of his filmography at this point is, fairly big name adaptations. Maybe Arrival wasn't super big in terms of its original source material, but that is a pretty famous short story writer. And so I was kind of like, it kind of does make sense, especially like he's going to do 3 Dune movies because he likes Dune. And apparently he really likes James Bond. So I'm very curious to see what kind of James Bond movie can come from Denis. This is the first Bond movie in a long time that will not be heavily controlled by the Broccoli family in terms of like, they're apparently very heavy-handed in terms of like how they want their movies to be made and for the stories to be told. It is now owned by Amazon. I believe they do have final cut over Denis, but I still feel like there's a lot of potential for where this could go. Like, he's not exactly known for making your standard fare movie, and I feel like that's pretty much what James Bond has been. Sometimes really good standard fare, but it's never sort of ventured too far into the artistic, which I feel like Denis is kind of known for.
Yeah, I think it's his. I'm just I'm intrigued to see his take, knowing that he's such a fanboy of it. I feel like he could get really into obviously like the tech and gadgetry of James Bond. Like I think this will be fun. But my big thing is like who's gonna play James Bond. So the rumor for years was Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I feel like that like so then there was this other report that came out. I'm trying to figure out where it actually came from, but the three names you saw this one where it was Jacob Elordi, Tom Holland, and
Mhm.
Harris Dickinson, and apparently they're looking for someone under the age of 30 and who's British. um and I don't know, for some reason in my head, I guess they're looking for someone who can just like be Bond for the next like 10, maybe even like 15, 20 years, maybe is like what they're hoping for, really like establish someone in there, as opposed to like I don't know that Denis is just gonna spend the next chunk of his life making a bunch of like I definitely think he's gonna do one. I could see him doing like a trilogy that might be about the most, but I don't know. What are your takes on the names that were thrown out? Notably, Elordi is not British; he is Australian, but yeah, they're apparently looking for a Brit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think with casting, I try to be sort of like who knows? Like I try not to be too judgmental about casting ahead of time because I'm not in the casting room, like I don't know what the direction Bond will go
Mm-hmm.
is. And so, when I think people I think especially Tom Holland, people have looked at and been like, no, no, it
Mm-hmm.
can't be Tom Holland. Like we
Mm-hmm.
saw him try Nathan Drake and it didn't work.
Yeah.
He's too much of a baby face. He's got too much Spider-Man energy. But I gotta say, I mean, what was that one that he was in? Something like Devil.
Let me look it up.
I'm
Tom
trying
Holland.
to look at it. I apologize for not having this on hand, but um, he was in a movie where I thought he definitely was able to move out of that range.
Mm-hmm.
Devil All the Time. And if like somebody like Denis is not going to cast Tom Holland unless he feels like it's gonna work,
I think the opposite is it's not necessarily that Denis. I actually don't know that Denis has like gets to choose who the next James Bond is. What I do feel better about is like the fact that he signed on to this movie either without knowing who Bond was, and then like they've implied who they would like, and he is okay with the direction of like the
right?
type of Bond they want to go with, or they do know who their James Bond is going to be, and they're just sort of like waiting to confirm that. So I do kind of feel like I think that like Chalamet was someone who I don't know that everyone was going to be like, oh my god, he's going to be he's the perfect Paul Atreides or whatever, and that I think was a brilliant bit of casting.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I'm excited. I think it's a really and he is somebody like you look at the people that have worked on Dune films, the level of talent that are in those films. I do think Denis is a smart choice to um, sort of lead this this rebooted version of James Bond. The only like risk, which you know is a stupid thing to be worried about, is like, will he set the bar too high, which is like the best problem they could ever have.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
that's pretty typical of Bond though, no? Like
that's true.
at least the modern Bond to me, like I grew up with like GoldenEye, and it was
Right,
like GoldenEye was the gold standard and then everyone after that sucked.
right.
And then the same thing kind of happened with Casino Royale. It's like, yeah, the first one's really good, and then they follow it up with some mediocre stuff occasionally. And I know that there are some good ones after each of those, but
Hmm.
those were the gold standard.
They have something
Um,
to live up to, so
yeah,
it's not a
and
bad thing.
the thing too is that like when Daniel Craig was announced, people thought it was a terrible choice.
100%. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible choice.
Yeah.
He wasn't the right look. He wasn't the right guy. He was too unknown. And then he was a fantastic Bond. Maybe some people will disagree about that,
The
but
the bad news, the person who probably is on the like, really end of like, I guess that's it, is probably Idris Elba, who for years was but even before
yeah,
Aaron Taylor Johnson was pitched as potentially the next Bond. And I certainly think based on like the reports of who they're looking at, Idris Elba would be a gigantic long shot to
Idris
get the role.
Elba
So
was, again, like growing up for me, Idris Elba was always my pick. But
yeah,
it is certainly too late, I think, for that, especially
yeah,
considering like that's the thing what happened with Daniel Craig is that like it takes so long to make these movies now. He's really starting to get a little,
yeah,
you know, maybe you say that to Tom Cruise and he'd tell you no, but
yeah.
starting to get a little old to play Bond. Um, Anyway, interesting news.
Fun,
And of
very
course,
fun.
there are other projects too that Denis is attached to. That people are like, when is he going to get to these?
I
It's
know
very much
Dune
the James
Messiah.
Cameron thing we talked about the
I
other week.
know.
So I would imagine that James Bond is going to take priority over anything else because they want to get moving on that. So I would assume as soon as Dune 3 is finished, James Bond will be next, and then Denis will do his other projects after.
I would assume that's correct.
All right. A couple other pieces of news. Lilo and Stitch, of course, we know did very well in the box office. The sequel is already in development.
Yeah, that's a no. I think it's a no-brainer. I think that there is a Lilo and Stitch. I think it was like a full straight to DVD movie originally, but I imagine it will not be the same sequel. But yeah, this makes
Lilo and Stitch, the series, Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch has a
Stitch
glitch.
has a glitch in 2005, I believe, is what I'm referring to. But yeah, this movie at the moment is number 3 worldwide, only behind Neja 2 and a Minecraft movie. So an absolute no-brainer to make a sequel to the Lilo and Stitch live-action movie. And you know, I think it's far enough removed. Many people's least favorite thing of this was the ending, so maybe they could fix the ending of the movie with a sequel.
This is fun news for me, and maybe some others who are fans of Park Chan-wook or fans of Neon, which is really like an up and coming, feels like an up and
There's a
coming
big
studio with
thing
all the
right
recent
now.
success.
The combo is like, is Neon taking the A20 as A24 become more mainstream, where they're like having like
Yeah.
these, like they don't have these like home runs all the time. Like I think good examples like Death of a Unicorn or whatever that movie, that Paul Rudd movie that came out earlier this year. It's like maybe A24 isn't the little indie darling. Maybe it's now Neon is like the indie darling. So
Yes, Neon, of course, just recently won Best Picture with
Anora, and
Anora.
they also acquired the rights to the Palme d'Or winner at the Cannes Film Festival. They won the Palme d'Or winner. They've acquired it or had it for the last 6 years. So, yeah, indie
So
darling.
they have bought No Other Choice by Park Chan-wook, his upcoming movie. And it's you know, he doesn't really miss. This is actually starring Lee Byung-hun. I'm not going to pronounce it very well, but
The
from
from
Squid Game.
Squid Game. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting.
And he's been in other things as well. He I think was he was a famous actor. He's a man. He's look at the A Bittersweet Life, Joint Security Area. I Saw the Devil, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Every single one of those is an absolute banger, and I recommend you watch them.
There you go.
This guy's incredible.
Oh, he was really good. Concrete Utopia. If you've never seen that, that came out a couple years ago. I really like it. It's about like these people who all have to live in an apartment complex, and then yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
But yes, excited for No Other Choice when that comes out. Yeah,
Fun.
A trailer came out. I don't know if we've talked about
Trailer.
this yet. Project Hail Mary.
I think we have talked about this because I think we talked about it when Reynolds got cast in it. This is from the same this is a Lord and Miller movie, but it
Yeah.
is from the same Andy Weir who wrote The Martian, and it's based on his follow-up to that, Project Hail Mary. The big thing I have to tell people is like I think that at some point I think the marketing is gonna you know, I mean, I didn't even watch the trailer and I know what happens. Did you watch the trailer, Taryn?
I did not watch the trailer. I know what is in the trailer, and I think that okay, so just to set the stage a little bit. Project Hail Mary,
I'm like
written
immediately
by the
feel like I've
same.
ruined the movie for people, but yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. So Project Hail Mary, written by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, which was adapted into a very successful movie, written by Drew Goddard, who is also, or co-written by Drew Goddard, who is also co-writing this movie. I don't know if Andy Weir's doing much with the screenplay or if it's mostly Drew Goddard. I don't know the work sharing there. But of course, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, very successful co-directors who did Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, 22 Jump Street. And so they're doing Project Hail Mary. You can expect this to be, I think, a good, fun movie. If you're listening to this podcast, I don't think you need to watch the trailer if you don't know anything about this. I think you can,
that's what I'm saying.
if it bombs and it sucks, you don't have to go see it. Otherwise, go see it. I would say stay away from marketing, stay away from the trailer. There are things that are in the trailer that are probably necessary to market the movie to people who might not see it otherwise. But if you want to go in with the best experience, I think that not watching the trailer will probably be your best bet.
Yeah, that is the sentiment I wanted to. And then I was like feeling like because I said there's a thing, now people are gonna feel like there's a thing, and then they're gonna know what the thing is. But
really
whatever,
like
can't do anything about it.
There are many movies like this too, but like there is a premise that it's not a huge spoiler, but it will be more fun if you don't know it. Basically.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The other thing that's kind of like fun about the movie or the book is that like the point of view character has to like basically try to remember a bunch of stuff. He doesn't remember a bunch of things. There's like a mechanism for that to happen. And so I actually think going in like very blind is like actually a little bit of like that's almost a mechanism that the book uses to like because it's hard sci-fi, the book. Like it's like very dense like astronaut stuff. That's the best way I can put it, not being an astronaut myself, or like scientists. And so like he starts to remember things, and then that's how you learn the thing, you know, rather than just a character who knows the answer to everything and then just like has to like you learn as he learns things, you learn the things. And that's I think that's the way the book was written, and I wonder whether or not the movie will. Well, I think it has to. So yeah, very fun. I'm very excited for this.
I have read both The Martian and Project Hail Mary. I obviously watched the movie for The Martian. I actually made a YouTube video on this a while ago.
You know what? Sometimes that pops up for me is like Taran Armstrong reacting. Yeah, you react in your face as you like it's about The Martian. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good thumbnail.
But basically, my thing with The Martian is that it's a great premise. But quite frankly, the book is, I think it undercuts itself a lot with its humor. It's just a lot of like a little bit cringy nerd humor a lot of the time. The movie tightens that up, I would say. And I actually think the movie is better than the book, The Martian. But it is still it does still have a bit of that. I think Project Hail Mary is, by a decent margin, from my opinion, a better book than The Martian. Okay. And I think that there's even less to sort of clean up in that regard for this one. I think that this has the potential to be a better movie than The Martian. But that's coming from somebody that, while I like The Martian, I wasn't like a huge fan. If you're a huge fan of The Martian, you might disagree with me. But I do think the general consensus is that people think Project Hail Mary is a better book than The Martian.
Okay. I have not read The Martian, so I can't speak to that, but I did like Project Hail Mary a fair bit. And the cast for this is really good. You have Sandra Huller, who people would recognize was in, gosh, the name of the movie. Let me just pull it up. It's she was in The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall in 2023. She's like the wife in Anatomy of the Fall. Ken Lung from Industry is in this, also in Lost. And then Lionel Boyce, who is from The Bear. He is Marcus, and the bear is in this as well. So it's a good little cast. I'm excited for this movie.
Yeah. I missed this news earlier. I don't remember if we talked about it, but I just saw some more news about Étoile, which was canceled. So I don't remember if we mentioned this. It was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we didn't mention it. I thought this was. I believe they were like in the middle of of Emmy campaigning. They've been like pushing for this show in some categories, and then they canceled it, which is a little embarrassing for the people involved to be like, let us win an Emmy. Also, our show is not on.
But part of the reason that happened is that they ordered 2 seasons of this show.
Yeah, right.
And so they wrote it, they made it, they were campaigning for it, all under the assumption that they had 2 seasons. and apparently it performed so poorly that Amazon said, actually, never mind.
I wanted to like this show. I just thought it was trying to do way too much. It was like the premise of it, if people don't remember, is the French and American ballet like swap their biggest stars or their étoiles. And I just thought that like I feel like one of those would have been good, like send an American to France or have the French ballet dancer be in America, and that's like a strong enough presence. And then it was just trying to be like, what if it's about the entire world of ballet? And you're like, too much, too many characters. Too much going
And this,
on.
of course, is Amy Sherman Palladino, who made The Marvelous Miss Maisel, Gilmore Girls back in the day. And remember, when we talked about the show premiering, she was having an issue with the way that they had released the show, dropping it all at once. And we were kind of talking about, like, what is the relationship between her and Amazon at this point? And clearly not very good, because they rescinded their 2-season order. So I just thought that was some interesting news, even though I also didn't really care for the show and didn't watch it beyond an episode.
Has a higher IMDb rating than I expected. I wonder whether
I think the people that got through it liked it.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't get through it.
Me neither.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other news before we get into some of the new shows this week?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, of course, the big one, Squid Game. It's back.
The end of Squid Game. The final
season, the end of Squid Game.
Except there's an American adaptation coming. But the end of this Squid Game.
I think we've both watched 2 of the episodes.
Yeah, I prioritized some other things before Squid Game. But I've watched the first 2 episodes. Yeah, I like it so far. I think it's quality television.
2 episodes in, I've loved it so far. I think it's a perfectly great continuation of what we were getting before, and I have no issues. However, I've heard.
Yes, I've heard something about an ending that I can't comment on yet because I've not seen it. But I think heading into the second episode, I feel like it's doing all the things I want. It's continuing the sort of longer arching story. It's presenting a very basic kids game, but in a killer format. Like we're hitting all the notes. Episode 2 is full of moments and things that happen. I feel like you can feel like this is a show that didn't pull punches, knowing it was in its last season. So I really like it so far. But yeah, I have heard the tinge of of what's to come, but I'm not going to let that bother me so far. I think the first 2 episodes are really, really good. Especially
I'm going in with optimism, because I feel like I'm consistently butting into, like, people that say like 28 years later wasn't great, and I'm like, I disagree. I think it was great. So I'm hoping that I really likes the rest of Squid Game. I'm hoping that it's not a general consensus thing. I haven't seen a ton of hate for Squid Game. It's not like people are saying this show has been ruined necessarily, but I've seen some rumblings, and it's still pretty new. It's still pretty young in terms of like people getting all the way through the season. So
they're like full hour episodes as well. So,
yeah. The general consensus, I think, has yet to be fully solidified at this point. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm seeing is like it certainly is like spurring conversations where people feel like it's like, well, I'm not sure yet, and that I feel like that's actually interesting. That's better than maybe not as good as like people were like, oh my god, that was amazing, but yeah.
Yes. So I would imagine we'll probably both be either finished or close to finished by next week. So maybe we'll get more into Squid Game next week.
I believe also, just very quickly, I believe in collaboration with Nothing But Netflix, Mike and Chappelle are back recapping every single episode for We Know Scripted TV. Mike covering it for Parade. So I think spoke with the director and creator last season, so has lots of insight. So they're recapping, I think, every individual episode. I could be wrong about that, but there should be some podcasts in the feed.
There you go. All right. So then there is The Bear, season 4.
Yeah. Man, I just think the show is incredible. I don't know. I know that you butt up against it a little bit, Taran, and watching it. I know that people felt like season 3 was treading water a little bit, and yes, there was this idea that initially was going to be sort of a 3-season show, and they decided to extend sort of season 3 into season 3 and season 4. They filmed I think about 60% of this back to back. I really feel vindicated in my appreciation of season 3. I really like season 3 on its own, but I especially think in conjunction with season 4, this is, I think, just a masterful piece of television that culminates in one of the best, at least sort of like scenes, emotionally resonant scenes. This has been overdone to death. There's absolutely no way the show is a comedy, but it's so good. I mean, I was thinking a lot about this because I really wanted to talk about. There's a scene in episode 10, and I will give no plot details other like to spoil anything. But there's this conversation that feels like it's basically 4 seasons in the works that I know some people have argued like this is a conversation that like, kind of like the thing that you talk about, Taran, all the time of like when we talked about House of the Dragon of like this, why don't we just talk to each other, problem of a television show, like they should just speak to each other and then we'll solve it. There's a little bit that I can acknowledge, like, yeah, this combo probably would have happened like, in the middle of season 1 if this was another show. It doesn't. A lot of the show is about about trauma, and the way we like hold that in and what we do. But there's this scene where I feel like Carmy and Richie are finally like speaking truth, and it's just this really interesting thing between the two of them where Richie has a connection to Carmy's brother. Carmy's brother passed away, as most folks will know. It's sort of the premise of The Bear that Carmy goes back to Chicago because his brother left him in this restaurant, and they're kind of jealous of what each other had, and at the same time sort of like the things that they had affect them so much. So you can imagine that like if you're Carmy, like, oh, you had this relationship with my brothers, he's saying to Richie, and yet Richie is like wasn't able to stop his friend from killing himself, like how hard that would be for an individual. And then on the opposite end, Richie being like, oh, but you had this perfect career, you were this like world renowned chef, and I thought you were living this great life. And all the while Carmy's being like, oh, I was like kind of like just miserable because I was putting all of my effort into that instead of like acknowledging everything else. And I just think this scene that happens in the finale is just so friggin' incredible. It's the best. It should win them both awards. I think Iowa Berry there's a thing where she's involved in it too, and she's really great. I really love The Bear. I think it's like so good. This launched up to me. I think it's probably my favorite thing this year on television. So amongst and it's been a phenomenal year for television. Like
Yeah,
we
that's
talked
saying a
about
lot.
we talked about the rehearsal. We talked about adolescence. I just think this builds and culminates to a moment that is so good. It's so good. So yeah, The Bear.
Well, so my perception of what I've seen is that there are people that agree with you, Grace, that there are people saying this was a great season.
Mhm.
I have also seen people saying still not good, still has not recaptured season 1 and 2. In fact, I saw somebody saying, I saw multiple people saying the first episode is an insult.
The first episode?
I don't know why. I haven't seen it. That's what I've seen. The people
This
are
is
like,
another one.
how could they? I
Again,
wouldn't have even watched the show if it was week to week after that first episode.
Again, this is a show where like the critic score is 80. So for season 4, critic score is 84, the audience score is 67. So there seems to be this mismatch. I think that happened last season too, where like I think the critics might have been lower on last season as well. Nope, 89 and 52. Like you just get this discrepancy, which is like, so I think in that you can see that like this isn't as bad as last season, but I can definitely feel like people feeling like, I don't know, there's a way in which like they are drawing out a story, certainly. Like I can certainly acknowledge that if people don't want to like live in this world. I know that was a big thing of season 1 and season 2, especially season 1. I know people were like, oh, it's amazing, but I can't watch it because it's like makes me so uncomfortable. There still is that, and I can see that would like sort of grind people down, and if we're not really like getting to a lot of resolution. I do feel like the end of the season gets to a resolution, but I can certainly see that people might be fed up with the show before they get to that moment. So I liked it.
Yeah, I think that from what I've seen, and certainly from your recommendation, if you are a fan of The Bear and you were down on season 3, it is certainly worth
100%
finishing out season 4. Because I think the odds are better than not that you will enjoy it more than season 3. And if you are somebody like me who didn't even particularly care for season 1 or 2, that's where we are. But
there's literally like in one of the scenes, like near the end of season 4, there's literally a scene where I noticed this, where like there's an argument that's happening and the characters are saying the same things over and over again. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting to me because I feel like somebody would edit that and be like, no, no, you already have that note, you know? And I do feel like it's reflective of what the show is trying to be, which is, um, I mean, the premise of the show, I think, is that this guy has not dealt with all the trauma in his life and is trying to just like have blinders and do this thing that he's supposedly really good at. But by doing that, it's actually like it's so linked with his trauma. Actually, the idea of like specifically owning this specific restaurant because it's the thing that his brother started, and he's just like repeating the cycles over and over again. And I feel like the reason why a restaurant is perfect for that metaphor is because there is that like space in a kitchen that can be, if anybody has worked in a kitchen, it can feel like that. The pressure of it is and you do the same things over and over again. You make the same meal over and over again. And there's actually a plot point between season 3 and season 4 where Carmy doesn't want to do the same menu every day. And for a high caliber like restaurant, that's a thing that's like going to be hard to, it's not that it is hard to do, like you don't get into the rhythms of anything. And so he's trying to break the cycle, but he's stuck in the cycles. And I just think the restaurant is, and then the expectation that people get perfection. So when you come to a high class fan, even when you go to any restaurant, you want the best meal like possible from that restaurant every single time. And so you as this creative person
Tell that
to
to Chipotle.
they are trying to give you the best, burrito bowl, Taran. But I just think that's like I think it's a perfect metaphor for the exact thing that Carmi's going through. But I do get that is like that's not it could be very frustrating television to watch of like this person doing the same thing over and over and over again. But that also is so much of the point of the show. So I just think it's brilliant, and I will not hear. No, people can like or not like the show as they like, but I just love it and I really appreciate it, and I'm so happy I watched
Yeah,
it.
I mean it's I mean the reason why I kept pushing through is because I do feel like it, it is a well-made show, and it is sort of going over things that are interesting to me, like hearing you talk about it. I'm like, yeah, I do see that and I think it's great, but for some reason just the experience of watching it, I just get so bored. It's just it doesn't capture me the way I would like to, but
Yep.
I can certainly appreciate that it really is going for something and works for a lot of people. And when you talk about like people repeating themselves in arguments, like that's I would love to see that. I think that's very, having watched Big Brother live feeds, that's very realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's generally what people do in arguments, is that they just repeat themselves.
Well, so you're hoping that finally the time you say this thing, they're gonna hear you and be like, "Oh, yes, that thing." But like you've already tried that and it doesn't work. But it's the only way you can like it's
Hmm.
the only way you think you can get that point across is to say it the way that it makes sense to you.
Well,
And so it's just
to
really good writing.
to move on from what you were saying without a response or concession from what you said is almost like an admission that what you said was not good enough, that
Right.
it failed.
Right.
And so
Right.
you try to just yell it louder. That's
Yeah.
just what people do. And then
Yeah.
also usually you can't come up with more than just your one thing because you're so heated.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've seen some discussion around the bear. I think I've seen more positive than negative, but there is some negative out there. I think certainly worth giving a shot if you're basically anybody,
Yeah.
except for me, I guess. But
Exactly what you said. If you like season 1, season 2, I do think this is like basically this is a 2 seasons wrapped into one, so you can kind of consider it like a 20 episode, season 3 basically. I feel like it does it sort of ties, I think, those two things together. I do think it feels like they did take some. I'm not one of those people who thinks that there was too much of the facts, particular set of characters. A lot of people thought there was in season 3. They're definitely toned down. They're still there. I think they're like there, maybe even a perfect amount. Maybe other people were right. It does feel like it gets to a thing, and I think it also gets to a thing that most people feel like the show doesn't do, which is like the show definitely gets like sort of like mixed up by the end. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's worth checking out. So yeah.
all right. Well, we got to talk about the one word S show of the week from Apple, Smoke. This is the show from Dennis Lian. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
But he, of course, made Blackbird with Taron Egerton, Previously, this is his new show with Taran Egerton about a troubled detective and an enigmatic arson investigator trying to catch two serial arsonists. I have seen 1 2/3 of an episode. I had to stop the episode to start recording this podcast, but which is unfortunate because I do think that the second episode people said I should finish, basically. But I also think that this is a show that it's very interesting to me. So let's talk about it. First episode, I was very intrigued at first, started to drift, and then came back toward the end. Second episode, I've been more into, but in general, it's not like super grabbing me quite yet. Like I'm getting there. But what I've heard is, and a lot of people are feeling this way, that they have heard the show gets really good after the first two episodes.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are like, not sure yet. You can see the IMDb rating here, 6.5, pretty low. I would say that's even low for these two episodes, quite frankly, having not finished the second one. But I'm very curious, Grace, what you think of Smoke.
Yeah, I've seen I think I've seen 6 episodes of I think it's a 9 episode season. And I do think it gets better. I do think this is like, firmly in good not great territory of like it's not the most amazing show ever, but I do like it. I think it's good. I really like Taran Egerton. I think that's my like I really liked him in this is another movie that I think is like certainly of a lower quality than this, but it's Carry On is the Netflix movie, the Christmas movie that came out around the holidays, where he is like an airport security agent who gets sort of wrapped up in like letting a bomb go through on a plane with Jason Bateman. I just like him as sort of the do-gooder, which is like kind of where he is in Blackbird as well. He goes undercover to try and see if they can get a serial killer to admit where he left the bodies. And so sort of like him as like law enforcement on the chase, I just think completely works for me with Taran Egerton. And there's enough of like, the mystery element of what's going on that I quite like Smoke. So I would encourage people to stick with it. I think like, it has a 6.5 out of 10, but like those first 2 episodes as of right now, with very few reviews, obviously, are at like 7s. They're like each episode is at a 7. So yeah, and I think the show gets better. So yeah.
Taran Egerton is very interesting in this role. This is, I would say, and this is, I think, what we expected. Not your typical kind of like cop show fare. It definitely feels elevated beyond that. It is not procedural. It feels more character study than it does like crime show, at least in these first 2 episodes. However, there is a huge element of like camp, I think, to this. Like Taran Egerton is really like chewing scenery. He's literally chewing gum like every time he's like on the field. He's wow, man, I think that he probably used this to light that fire.
Yeah.
And he wants to be a writer, and so like he's like writing about fire cases.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like him trying to like say things in like poetic ways, and he's talking about I see nothing in fire. And so there's like, it's a very sort of like interesting vibe that I think is very fun, but sometimes I think is a little too much. In particular, the first episode, what really started to bounce me is that they had a lot of like quick cut flashes to their kind of flashbacks. And they just take me out. Like the first episode, throughout like the first 2/3 of the episode, were just multiple times quick flashing to like a sex scene. And it's like, why? And then they eventually explain why in the episode, but it was like, why did we need that? I feel like this could have been told in a more effective way that I would have preferred, which was just like not flashing to it first, and just instead of being like, what are they showing this for? Be like, why is she here? And then they explain it. So some stylistic choices I don't love, some stylistic choices I do. And I'm curious to watch much of it. 9 episodes is a lot, but especially if it just keeps getting better, then I'm in.
Can I tell you something? I feel like if he hadn't been in Kingsman, Taran Egerton would make a good Bond. I feel like but he basically did like pseudo Bond in the Kingsman. He's like, yeah. So I don't think he'd be Bond, but
Yeah, he also, I think, looks very similar to Daniel Craig if he was going to be Bond.
Yeah.
Not that that's an issue, I think, but
And apparently he's too old. He's 35, so he's too old. Apparently,
he's a good-looking 35.
I know. Yeah.
All right. Countdown. Not much to say on Countdown.
I didn't watch Countdown.
I didn't watch it either. It's got a 7.0. Actually, more ratings than Smoke does. But it says people seem to fairly enjoy it, but I have not watched it, so I cannot speak on it myself.
Such a dad show.
Yeah, I imagine.
Jensen Ackles.
But let's talk about some movies, because big movie of the weekend, F1 the movie.
Yeah, F1 the movie. I watched F1. I like F1. I know Brad Pitt sucks, so I wish he didn't suck, because I just really like him as an actor. I think he's really good in this. I think this movie is so out of the Top Gun Maverick school. I think that we're gonna just see Joseph Kosinski do this thing where, so basically many parts of the movie are like, I got to do this thing. And then they like show you how they're going to do that thing. And then while they're doing that thing, they're like very clear markers to show you. So a good example is like he comes in to like do a test run of the course, and he's like, and I'm going to beat that kid's score by a second. And so then the whole time as he's like passing markers, like the screen flashes up and it's like, oh, he's slower than a second on this one, you know? And it's like, so it's basically just immediately telling you whether he is doing better or worse than the thing that he's trying to do, which feels very Top Gun Maverick. If you watch, they tell you the like thing that they're going to do at the end of that movie. Like
I was just imagining myself like the world where this is a movie about F1 drivers saving the world.
I mean, not really, but like, you know, kind of. They're just like, you know, they have to win one race, you know, so like they got to do it, and they, you know, they get close, and there's a setback, you know, it's the whole thing. So I don't know. And then it's about, like, there's so much of the movie that's about him and then the young guy, which is so much of like the Top Gun Maverick thing of like him and in that movie it's not is it Rooster? What's the son's name? It's not Rooster. Doesn't matter. I feel bad. Miles Teller's character in Top Gun Maverick. So he has this with like this young driver who's a bit cocky and like, but and so it just has that same dynamic, but they have to work together because in F1 you're in like a team, you know. So it just has so much of that DNA, and it's definitely not Top Gun Maverick, but I do think it does get to moments where like when you are watching them drive the cars, it is, you know, when you're in the like, you know, from the point of view of Brad Pitt, it's very cool, and there's specifically like a couple of sequences that I think work really well. So I thought it was, you know, enjoyable enough to go check out at a theater. But yeah, I think like sort of it being basically 8 out of 10 is, I think I gave it 4 stars. Like I just think that's basically where I put it. It's not a 5-star movie like Top Gun Maverick, but it's pretty close, I would say.
Filmed for IMAX also. It's people I think have said very fun to watch.
It's very fun to watch in IMAX. Yeah. Yeah, it's loud. It's like you're in the car. It's also like, you know, the part of the fun of the F1, there's like 9 races by the time you get to this point of the season. So they're going to like Mexico and Abu Dhabi and like Paris, and, you know, they're all over the world. So every like time they go to a new place, it's like a drone shot of the like race car track set up. So yeah, kind of a travel movie to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much exactly what we expected, and it's 100%. Doing very well in the box office. So you can expect to see more F1 as we move forward. Megan 2.0 is the other movie that came out this weekend.
Yeah, I'm kind of stunned that this movie doesn't, like, the first one had such a stranglehold on pop culture, Taran. I feel like it's non-existent, this one, which is
the news is that this one bombed. This really bombed.
Yeah, it did like 17 million worldwide, which like for a horror movie is fine, but I imagine this one had a fair bit of like special effects because it's like the Megan doll is so, like, it is played by a girl, but it's animated. This movie is like, you know, I feel like this is another one that I feel like the expectations for what this movie was are like it just hit it exactly. Of like it's a worse version of the first one. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, this movie apparently like at most was 25 million. Probably then you like double that for marketing, so it has to make about 50 million. It made 17 million. Like I don't know that it would have a ton of legs, but I feel like the first one too was like there are a lot of these horror movies that can kind of go to streaming and have a ton of success. So again, I don't know how you like they quantify how much money you make off of that, but I don't. Yeah, this movie is just, you know what? There's not enough good kills in it. It's kind of the problem. Like it's,
Well, that's the
yeah,
talk that I've seen, and I've not seen the movie, but the talk that I've seen is that they kind of genre shifted, and
yeah, it's
it's
more
not really
actiony.
horror anymore.
It's not horror. It's action. Like
Mhm.
the other there's a new robot. This is basically Terminator 2, where
Right.
there's a version that in the first one was our enemy. Now we need to befriend it, and it needs to help us because there's a stronger version. It's exactly what the movie is, but it's not horror at all. It's more action fight sequence than horror, which yeah, it's a bummer. Like there's yeah, in the first one, it's like her killing a bunch of things that are like gonna hurt Katie, the little girl, and you basically don't get any. You it becomes like a worldwide government, like the government has its hands on a version of Megan 2.0 or whatever, and it's just
I
not. It's not very.
I just
It's
think
not as
that's
fun.
it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the audience was attracted to, I think, in the first place. Like horror has a
1,000%.
niche.
Yeah.
And I think there are, like the talk is that like, the gays loved the movie, right? Which I think is like, not to overgeneralize, but like horror is a genre that audience I think gravitates toward much more so than like cyber thriller action, sci-fi. Like
1,000%. So much of the fun was like, yeah, it's this little girl robot doll who's gonna murder people, and then in the second movie, it's like, oh, the murder robot doll has to fight another robot murder doll, and it's like, that's not what I came here for. I came for the
mhm,
murder robot girl to like literally slay, come on,
right.
kill some random people, like if there was like a nod towards like, killing like literal government, like, employee. Not that I'm like vouching, I'm Canadian, whatever. Um, there was just, was not it. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's not unwatchable. It's just kind of like boring. It's not, which is the total opposite of Megan. When it came out, it was like, oh, this is so not boring. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, there's two other movies I want to talk about.
please.
One is one that I
Yeah,
did not talk about last week.
we haven't talked about this, but it's like, yeah, it's
I
K-pop
meant
demon
to, and I
hunters.
forgot to.
Yeah,
K-pop Demon Hunters, and
yeah.
I watched this.
Okay.
I liked it. I thought it was good.
Should I watch it?
I think you should watch it. I think it's a
Okay.
fun movie. It
Okay.
is a 7.8 on IMDb right now.
People really like this.
Um,
This is what I heard. Yeah.
it is. Listen, it's nothing revolutionary, but basically, it's just got some bangers. Like the music is just really good, and there's a lot of it in it. And like the animation is good, and the music is good, and the writing is good enough. And just on that alone, it's just a fun thing to have on and to watch. It's just a good time.
Yeah, this kept popping up in like, because like I think you and I probably did the same. We were like looking at like what else was coming out, and this like kept popping up, which was a thing like I wasn't really expecting it to, because like a lot of times like sometimes these curated lists will not include some of the more like international features that it doesn't think will get any traction in America. But this one, and I feel like it keeps popping up on my Netflix. Like it's like you should watch this. So yeah,
Yeah, I would. It's obviously not going to be for everyone. I think that like there are some people that might be turned off by the name K-pop Demon Hunters. They might be like, "Oh, that's not for me. That's not. That's going to be like a kids thing, or it's going to be like I'm not into K-pop." You don't need to be into kids things. You don't need to be into K-pop. It doesn't. It's just good music, and it's a good movie. I think
okay,
anyone could watch this and have a good time.
okay, fun. It could be Netflix being like, in the last few, you watched a lot of Korean stuff. You should probably watch K-pop. You watched all of
Fair.
Devil's Game. You should probably watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
The other one on Netflix that has been kind of taken off here lately, Trainwreck
Oh yeah,
Poop Cruise.
Yeah, I watched a different Trainwreck. So, did you watch Trainwreck Poop Cruise?
I did not watch this, but it's just been like the latest thing. So I discovered that yes, Trainwreck is
Trainwreck.
apparently an anthology series
Yeah.
of documentaries,
Yeah.
and Poop Cruise has kind of like taken off.
And they're like typically like an hour is the
Mhm.
thing that they do. So they do a different documentary subject. I watched the one on Rob Ford, which is the former mayor of Toronto who got caught smoking crack. That's the one I watched. I think it's I can't remember. Yeah, Mayor
Mayor
of
of Mayhem.
Mayhem is the one that I watched. And I was tempted to check out Balloon Boy and Poop Cruise, but I have not watched either of them. This is I feel like I didn't live in Toronto when Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto, but I feel like it was almost too wild for it to be like captured, you know, in the and it kind of has a like in terms of like Rob Ford as a he then like just he tried to make a comeback and he had cancer and he passed away. So it's like like in terms of like trying to be like we're gonna take down this the guy who got caught smoking crack, and then it kind of has this like ending of his real life that isn't suitable. But did you watch Poop Cruise? Did I ask you that? You
No,
said
I
yeah?
did not
No,
watch
no,
Poop
no, no.
Cruise. I'm personally very skeptical of Netflix documentaries. I'm waiting for them to get off of their current meta so that I can maybe enjoy the next meta.
No, this
But
seems to be
so
like their new thing. It's like just these these quick bite one episode documentary
what
dramas.
is this? What would you say the style of the Trainwreck documentaries are? Is it like, because I feel like the style of Netflix documentary that I personally don't care for is just like a lot of talking heads with no clear narrative beyond what they're saying and like some cuts to stuff.
I regret to inform you that that's basically
Okay.
exactly
We're
what
still
at
doing that.
least
That's
Mayor of
fine.
Mayhem was. People who were involved in his life who knew him, this is what Mayor of Mayhem was like, where it's like they're the ones telling the story. You get like images or clips of things. You get like journalists who are like, and I couldn't believe what he said at the time, and then and then without it really having a
I
coherent
mean,
story.
uh,
So
yeah, the coherent story is the thing that I need the most, I think, with a document. I want to be told a story. I don't want to have like random quotes from people that are seemingly not super connected. You know what I mean? Like
right,
I want you to tell me the story. I don't want to have to like parse it out from your random pieces of things.
right.
But that's
I
just
have
me. I know
not
a lot of people
watched.
love them.
I haven't watched Poop Cruise, but yeah.
Well, a lot of people have watched Poop Cruise. I honestly thought about watching it, and this is the thing.
I know I've tempted, yeah, as
I
well.
have algorithm anxiety.
Of being fed something.
I fear
You don't want to be fed
clicking
Poop
on
Cruise.
things.
Mhm.
I fear clicking on things lest the
Yeah, yeah,
algorithm
yeah,
think
yeah.
I want more of that thing. And so
Yeah.
when I saw Trainwreck, I was like, I know this is a very popular movie right now or documentary right now.
Yeah,
I should probably watch it.
yeah,
And then I went to click on Poop Cruise and I went,
yeah. So,
ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to tell the algorithm I want to see this.
yeah, tough.
Yeah.
You need
So that
we
was
need
me.
like incognito for our algorithms, Be like, I'm gonna
Right?
click on this, but I don't want it to inspire all future recommendations, please. Only
Exactly.
if I end up giving it a thumbs up shall you be inspired to change my algorithm. Yeah.
Netflix also has a new UI, at least for the app I'm using, and
I
I
heard.
don't like it when people complain about new UIs, but it's really overwhelming to me. It's very, I feel like it's so much harder to find. It's like so much bigger, everything, and
Do you know what
it's
happens to me
very
every
annoying.
time I go on Netflix? Is like I'll be like looking for the thing I just watched, and I feel like it happens to me on the Canadian service Crave, where it'll be like I know I was just watching this episode, so it should be up front, and I'll like scroll down and I can't find it because I think it should
Oh
be
yeah,
like
they
in the
do
one
that on
over,
purpose.
and then I scroll back up and it's there, and I'm like, why didn't you show this to me originally when I
Because
originally came on to? I know they have a reason, but it's so annoying.
they want you to get it. They want you to watch as many different things as possible. If
Can,
you're able to find what you're looking for immediately, then
Can I
not a
give you
good thing.
one other thing I was thinking? I watched a lot of TV this last week, Taryn, and I am
Mhm.
so sick of this one specific trope, which is I feel like every single television show or movie I've watched in the last like month has had this thing where it'll be like the character will go up and they'll be like, "Oh, hi, my name is Brian," and then the other character just be like, "Oh, your name is Ryan," and the joke is that like they don't care about that character enough to know their name, and I am getting so sick. I will the next time I see it, I think I'm just gonna turn off whatever show. This trope is driving me nuts, where it's like, and then the character be like, all right, see you later, Ryan. They're like, oh, my name's Brian. And it's just to show that that person doesn't care about that person, or that they're vain or whatever, but I hate it. I'm so sick of it. It needs to die. It needs to die a slow death. That specific.
I'm with you. I'm with you when you see those reused tropes over and over.
So annoying.
I did watch 2 other movies. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them, but I watched. Let's see. I watched Novocaine.
What'd you think?
It was a fun little movie.
It's kind of one of those premises that you're like, I feel like when the movie starts, you're like, oh, I'm surprised we haven't really done this before, which I'm sure like someone will be like, oh, actually this movie from 1997 did the same premise. Like, that's not really what I mean, but like, yeah, I feel like we haven't had like a big surprise. And then kind of like as you're through, you're like, oh, maybe like that's why they haven't, because it only works for a little bit. I feel like the premise. There's some like interesting stuff they do every once in a while. It's really gnarly. I thought like there was like, I'm definitely someone who's like knees go weak occasionally, and like some of the stuff that they do to him because he can't feel pain is a little gross. But
yeah, I mean they basically exhaust the premise, but in a good way. They just have to use it as much as possible. And I thought it was fun. It was kind of like a silly little movie, but not in a bad way. Just don't go in expecting it to be like airtight or anything. But it was a good time. I also watched Until Dawn finally, which is the movie based on the video game Until Dawn. Even though it is very not based on that game at all. Theoretically in the same world, but not the same story of the game at all. Not the same premise of the game at all. We talked about this a little bit. Like the premise of this movie Until Dawn is that they are stuck in like a time loop where they, if they die, they come back, like it's a video game. Except Until Dawn, the video game, the entire conceit of the game is that the characters have permadeath, and that if they die in the game, they're dead forever, which is not usually how video games work. And so they adapted it to be the complete opposite.
It has a butterfly effect, right? Where it's like the things you do change.
Yeah,
the
it's
story,
like you make choices,
which then doesn't seem to work for a like how that doesn't really make sense. Like the whole point of a movie is like
it's a game that feels much more like a movie than most games would.
Right.
So theoretically, you could just adapt that, and also the game had people like Rami Malek and Hayden Panettiere in it. Of course, at this point, they're not going to be able to afford Rami Malek for a random horror movie, but still, I mean, I feel like I didn't need Until Dawn to be made into a movie. The story's nothing special, but it just like the premise of this just made very little sense to me in terms of it being an adaptation of the game, or even the style of story that the game tells. And it really wasn't much special either. I mean, it was fine. There's basically, I would say, one very good scene in this movie that I thought was very funny and fun. Apart from that, it was very generic.
Okay. One good moment.
Basically, it has to do with water. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Wow, big spoilers, Taran. Come on.
It's no spoilers.
Water moment? Oh, man.
All right. Anything else to catch up on?
Nope.
All right. Should we talk about what's coming?
Let's do it. Oh, Ironheart came out last week.
Oh, yes. I forgot about Ironheart.
Yeah. I didn't get the chance to. I was watching too much other stuff.
Yes.
That's being review bombed. It's being review bombed. It's being review bombed. I've heard it's better. I think it's like it's like good, not great, or like, really good, but not amazing. Like that's sort of what I've heard about Ironheart, and it's getting totally review bombed because these idiots on the internet are racist losers. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do not think it's a 3.6, but for me to have interest in a Marvel TV show right now, it would have to be like,
would love to hear what people
really good.
Who have watched it so far think of it.
If it's fine but getting review bombed, then it's still not good enough for me to watch. If it's really good and getting review bombed, then I'd watch it. But like, I just don't care about Marvel TV shows at the moment. I'm just so done with them.
Fair.
All right. Upcoming shows. Big one for me, at least. Not Sandra Bullock, but The Sandman. Sandman season 2. This is, of course, the show based on the Neil Gaiman comics. Neil Gaiman has since been exposed as I don't even know.
He was accused
label
of
would be.
sexual harassment and sexual abuse to people who were like nannying for him. So,
Right.
you know, an abuse of power as well on top of that, and I think fans of his as well. So just abusing his fame.
Very not good things.
Yeah.
And it has sort of seemingly been, you know, the cause or a cause of some of these TV projects being shut down, like Good Omens and The Sandman. However, the I think company line at this time is we were planning to end it anyway, which actually
What they
does make
say.
some sense because it was barely renewed in the first place, and apparently they shot season 2 as because basically like season 1 was like volume 1 of the comics plus some extras with some bits of like volume 2 or here or there. I
I
think.
can't remember. Yeah, I know that they definitely did like they like kind of did like surprise double like 2 episode drop at the end of the season. They were like, here's 2
Yes.
extra episodes, and they were like not from volume 1. And I definitely think there was some overlap with volume 2, but I
I
honestly
think there
don't
might
remember
have.
if
I
that's
think it
right.
might have been 1 and 2 together with season 1. I don't remember exactly, but it was basically like the first couple of volumes. It's a 10-volume, I believe, series, and apparently the plan has always been to do all of the rest of the volumes for season 2, which actually does make some sense if you are very strict about which stories you're telling and you adhere specifically to like the character of the Sandman and you don't tell some of the branching stories as much and so on and so forth. It could theoretically be done, and that is apparently what they have done. So it's kind of a weird situation. I believe I believe I remember reading about like Neil Gaiman um sort of like removing himself from all of these projects.
I know that's for sure for Good Omens. He was like, "Oh no, I'm not writing the final season," but I don't know whether that's true. He didn't. He did write at least one of the episodes in season 2, but he might have like once the stuff happened, he might have like stepped away. So I know that the teleplay for like the very last episode is written by Gaiman, but I think that this was before everything happened, and like once everything came out, he like stepped away from all of
Mhm.
his roles. So yeah, and they're releasing this. I think for a show that they're kind of feeling like they're kind of like half burying this in the sense that like they've really
It's
done
getting
very
pushed
little.
to me. I mean, I
They've
watched the first season, but it's been on my Netflix front page for the last like 2 weeks.
I just can't like so I reached out to do some marketing and I feel like Netflix is typically pretty good at getting back and there's been zero word on this. I haven't seen any sort of like they didn't do a junket. I presume because they just didn't want to get asked these questions the whole
Mm.
time. So just like there might be like pivoting in terms of like what type of market that they're like if you already watched it, like just promo it up on your Netflix screen. But they then are releasing it in this weird batch format where there's going to be 6 episodes on July 3rd, 5 episodes on July 24th, and then a final special episode on July
Mhm.
31st. And so I don't that to me it seems if you were fully trying to bury it, you would just release it all on July 3rd and hope, never speak of it again, but that's not what they're doing. So, interesting.
Strange stuff.
The other thing about the show is that, like it presumably was pretty expensive. I think it had at least for season 1
Mm.
a budget of 15 million per episode, and that's just because it's so. I mean, the main character's name is Dream, and so it's very dreamlike. There's some really cool CGI sequences stuff that are like, you can imagine if that's one of the compliments that the show gets is how sort of faithful it was to things that people saw in the comic book or the graphic novel version and then depicted in the show. And so it looked amazing, but then unfortunately that would also come with a huge animation CGI budget. So I just think they ultimately decided to move forward, but just with this one additional season, and that wrapped up with all the game and stuff makes sense, I think, to them. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's one other show I saw. Such Brave Girls is going to air its second season. This is a sitcom on Hulu. I have not seen it, but it seems relatively well received.
I hadn't even heard of this. So yeah.
Yeah, just it's a dysfunctional family sitcom that follows sisters Josie and Billy and their single mom Deb. And mom implies to me that this is British, but
It
who
is
knows?
British. It is British. Yeah.
As they navigate life armed only with poor judgment and self-esteem, exclusively tied to people who couldn't care less about them. So I imagine they have bad
Okay.
spouses.
So this is a re-airing of a season that aired in 2023. So it aired on the BBC in 2023, and it's co-produced by A24 and is now being released in America on Hulu. So to me, that actually makes me more intrigued to watch it because it was good enough to have aired and then
Well,
re-aired.
there is a second season of the show also.
Oh yeah, that aired in May 2024, and now they're airing the first season in America, or they're airing. This is the
The
second. This
second
is the
season is
third season
premiering
it's airing.
on the 7th.
Oh, okay, I see. This is the second season, and now it's also
Season
on
2
Hulu.
premiere.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, that actually makes me more interested in the fact.
Starred the creator stars in it as well. So Kat Sadler.
Apparently she's queer as well, so that's intriguing to me. So, okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then of course, any other shows from coming
I
up?
don't
That
I
you
don't
saw?
think shows. I don't think so.
Movies, of course, we have Jurassic World Rebirth coming out this week. Reviews have already started coming in. They're not great.
I like the cast for this movie. That's maybe
Yeah.
about the extent that I could say in terms of Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey all
And
involved. So
it's Gareth Edwards directing. I think he's a good director. I think he's maybe not the best writer. Did he write The Creator? Yeah, he co-wrote The Creator.
I actually like the creator.
I did not.
I know people were out on it, but I liked it.
It's visually great. The tech he used to make that movie was really cool. He's a very, very good filmmaker.
He does a lot with a little budget. I'm intrigued to see
Exactly.
what this movie that like the creator was like for $40 million and looked
Mhm.
really incredible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think like I genuinely feel like Gareth Edwards, he's poised to do something really great. Obviously Rogue One, I think has its fans, myself somewhat included. Monsters is a really interesting movie. Uh, the creator, unfortunately, I thought was going to be like his thing to break out. Like, here's him making an original thing that he at least helped write. I think the thing about him writing is that he doesn't really write conventionally. I don't
Right.
think he enjoys writing. He films his movies a bit strangely. I just feel like the right chemistry has yet to be sort of created for him to make
Yeah.
something amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it exists. I think he will someday make something really great. I doubt Jurassic World is going to be that, but I was interested to see what this would be.
Mhm.
So far, like I said, the reviews have not been great, but who knows? Maybe the general audience will like it.
There are two movies that are getting limited release this weekend. If you're in a bigger city, you might be able to catch them, which is Hearts of Darkness, which is the documentary about the filming of Apocalypse Now. So which was, if you know, a like pretty like haunted no, this isn't the right one. No, no, not that one. It's a pretty
There
haunted,
was another one that
yeah,
looked more like it, but
yeah.
I was like, this one is 2025.
Um, it was a pretty wild shoot, pretty like
Did you say this is a
tumultuous.
re-release?
Yeah, it's a re-release.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why it's 1991.
Yeah. So this documentary is incredibly good. If you could probably just, I think it's on YouTube. You could go see it, but if you could go see it in theaters, it's really fascinating. I believe it's by Eleanor Coppola like directed it, and it's like about this the making of Apocalypse Now, which was done by her husband, which was pretty wild. And then This Is Spinal Tap, I think, is getting re-released. If you've never seen This Is Spinal Tap, it's the 41st anniversary of This Is Spinal Tap, so highly recommend checking that out as well. Kind of fun
Classic.
throwback movies you could go check out this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one other movie, 40 Acres. that I saw is going to be released. I don't know if it's going to be a wide release, but this is a post-apocalyptic world with food scarcity. A black family of Canadian farmers descended from American Civil War migrants defend their homestead against cannibals trying to seize their resources.
Yeah, this premiered at TIFF. It stars Daniel Deadwyler. I didn't see it, and I didn't hear amazing things about it, but it is kind of interesting that it is being finally released after. I believe it made Canada's top 10 films of last year, as well, put up by the Toronto International Film Festival. So, yeah, I love Daniel Deadwyler. So, yeah.
Mm. All right, I think that's it then.
That's it
for this week.
Well, Taran, next week is as of tomorrow is July, which means the year's halfway over. And about a little more than a year ago, when we started this podcast, one of the first things we did was checked in on our top 5 television shows of the year. And I feel like we should do that next week. I'll also put together a little form that the fans can fill out. We'll just get a quick gauge of people's top 5 shows of the year. Maybe we check in on what we think is the best TV of the year so far.
I think it's going to be highly competitive.
I know. I actually think last year I feel like we were pretty similar. I feel like we might differ a fair bit this year.
Well, we likely will, at least on The Bear.
Yeah, The Bear.
Because I will not have it ranked because I will have not watched it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we'll do a little check-in next week. Yeah. I presume we'll finish Squid Game as well. So, yeah.
All right. Well, tune in next week. Top 5 shows of the year so far. We'll also talk a bit more about Squid Game, I think, just in general, if we have both finished watching it. And of course, we'll talk about Sandman and Jurassic World and all of those things. I did also forget to mention briefly, 28 years later. I think, interestingly, this is a quick aside. Fairly big drop domestically here in the US in terms of its box office performance. Actually, not a bad drop internationally. It's actually doing better, seemingly.
It's making more money internationally than it is in America, which, as a British movie, like, that does make some sense. But yeah,
that's kind of the discussion, I think, is shifting to Americans did not love this movie, but British audiences and international audiences did like it a lot more. And it is seemingly on track to probably do well enough to get a third movie greenlit, but nobody knows exactly where that line is. And it's probably kind of close. So we will see. But thought that was a interesting update.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, that's what we have for you this week. Tune in next week for the best of the year so far and everything else. In the meantime, you can find me over on YouTube and Patreon and Twitch and all of those places. Big Brother is coming up quite soon. Grace, where can people find you?
I'm on social media at Hi From Grace or at Go From Grace. I am writing for Parade. I should have some fun interviews with some people in some shows that people know of. I'm interviewing someone in Dexter Resurrections, and I'm interviewing somebody from Peacemaker coming up, so that's exciting. And then over on Pop Heist, I am wrapping up my Poker Face recaps, and then I will be recapping one of my favorite shows of all time weekly. I am going back to revisit Netflix Dark and recapping it weekly over on Pop Heist, so looking forward to doing that. That's it, Taran, from me.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here this week, and we will see all of you next time.